As is always the custom, we read the Parsha of Devarim. We begin the fifth book of the Torah on the Shabbat before Tisha B'Av. And this year is no exception, even though in fact Shabbat is Tisha B'Av and Tisha B'Av, the fast, is pushed off till the next day. That's still the case. I want to address Tisha B'Av as we usually do in this class. And in doing so, I just want to give all the credit for the value of this class to my wife, who really always prepares a Tisha B'Av class and put together a beautiful array of sources and references, and is not able to give the class herself right now, so I'm giving it in her stead. And please God, although I won't do it fully justice, hopefully the points will get across. And the title of this class is Heaven on Earth. Let's look at the Tisha B'Av is the day on which we mourn the destruction of the temple. And we come to grips with the fact that the temple no longer is in our midst. And the perspective, the starting point of this is this title of this class, Heaven on Earth. And we're going to explain that very carefully here. But let's start with an audacious statement, and let's then try to understand it. Let's make the statement. Christians feel closer to heaven. Jewish people feel closer to earth. Let's see if this statement is true and holds up. And this is going to be the underpinnings of this entire class and our approach to coming to grips with the meaning and purpose of Tisha B'Av and how we can make the most of it. So what do I mean by this? We all know classical Christianity is rooted in the concept of immaculate conception, holds up goals of celibacy, vows of poverty, the idea of being saved from an impure world. And hence, there's an aspiration in the Christian community to be in the heavens. How do we, the Jewish people, what is our orientation? Our orientation is to recognize the fact that every aspect of our physical selves and the reality within which we live has a spiritual component to it, which can elevate us and which we can elevate and which can be utilized in building an enduring, close, meaningful, vibrant relationship with God. So it's not rejecting anything. It's not looking at the world with suspicion, and we're going to build this up through the sources here, but it's rather embracing the world that God has created and recognizing the fact that, as the Maharal puts it, every molecule that God created contains within it spirituality, holiness, potential for greatness and good. And whenever we say those words, we mean potential to better connect us and build a relationship with God. And that's the underpinnings of the Jewish people. That's what we're all about. I'll add a statement to this that was very meaningful to me. Instinct is neutral. What does that mean? Because I think people think of religiosity as being overcoming, suppressing instinct. Let's challenge that concept as well. Instinct in the animal world guides all of animal behavior. They're instinctual beings, and we can almost predict their behavior, and that's their place in the world. We human beings have instincts. They're really not good or bad. It's a question of how we utilize them, channel them, and apply them in the world, and what context we place them that really elevates our instinctual being and helps holiness become part of those instincts or not. That's inherent in the concept of free choice. And that's why marriage, which again, the antithesis of celibacy as a goal, the antithesis of believing that if there is a divine being in the world, it's created immaculately, so it's not tainted by sin. We have Kiddushin, we have marriage, where a person undertakes a relationship with another person, a physical relationship, and through that they build a spiritual bond, through that they build a home, through that they build a family, through that we build a community and a society. And it all can be defined by and penetrated with holiness and Kedusha, and hence we refer to marriage as Kiddushin, sanctification. Again, stressing the idea that here in our present state of being, holiness is available to us, holiness is to be utilized by us, and it's not a question of ourselves turning our backs on anything in the world, because if we were to do so, we would be denigrating an aspect of God's creation, an aspect of the nature that God has planted within us, and we'd be denying an opportunity through the various mitzvot that we have, which we know are so encompassing. We know that they encompass our eating, our cooking, our sleeping, our speaking, our dressing, our grooming, our marital relationships. We have mitzvot that attach themselves to every dimension of human life. And that's the reason we have that, is because it all has great potential for holiness. So we get this idea of Iker Shechina B'Tachtonim, that the word Shechina, which refers to Hashem's presence, we seek Hashem's presence here below, not by reaching up to the heavens. There are many references we can give, but let's try to build this case in a very orderly way. And when I say orderly, you have to understand, and this is not exactly the order that my wife designed this class, but it's an order that works well for me. We're going to go backwards, but we're going to start with Jacob's dream, which is in Genesis chapter 28, where Jacob is escaped at peril to his life from his father's house. He's escaping Esav. It's found in the stone Chumash on page 144, 145. We're going to look at a quote on 146. And what happens? What happens is Jacob has this dream of a ladder from the heaven to the earth. Hashem is nitzav elav, and we'll see what that means, but Hashem is present, standing there. And when you look at sentence 16 on page 146, 147, what do you read? You read, Jacob awoke from his sleep and said, surely Hashem is present in this place, and I did not know. Just take that at face value. And of course, this place happens to be the place where the Beit HaMikdash, where the temple is meant to be built. And we know it has already a spiritual history to it. But there's a concept here. Jacob is awakened by the fact that here I was sleeping. I was passively occupying a place which is none other than awesome. And then he goes on in sentence 17, and Jacob became frightened and said, how awesome is this place? This is none other than the abode of God, and this is the gate of the heavens. And the gate of the heavens does not mean an escape hatch to the heavens. It means a meeting place. And if you really need to look at the translation and commentary of Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch, and I really recommend you do so, but he especially stresses the idea of nitzav, which is the word used. Nitzav means standing directly with someone. So the idea is that Jacob had a dream, as we sometimes think of it, and remotely he saw God on the top of a ladder up in the heavens. No, God was next to him, present with him, connected to him in a flow of angelic communication that went back and forth. And this is the place Hashem is present in this place. And I did not know, I didn't appreciate that, I didn't value that, I never had that awareness that in the here and now, very spot that I'm sleeping on, God's here. And this place is an incredible place. It's the most special of all the places, but every place has its specialness, and we'll play that out a little bit more. This house that he refers to is permeated by an awareness of God's closeness and presence, not God's remoteness. The place is awesome. Manora hamakam hazeh. It's not awesome because of some distant representation. It's awesome because this place I have occupied is a Beit Elohim. It's a house of God. This understanding of Jacob's dream becomes a bedrock to the idea that the word Shekhinah, which is the word Shochen, your neighbor dwells amongst you, lives amongst you. I mean, in fact, it's played out, again, a reference to the building of the Mishkan. The Mishkan was the temporary version of the temple, which we utilized for, and I not exactly tell the amount of years, but somewhere around 450 years, as a meeting place, an Ohel Moed, a meeting place with God. Also, that word means we meet God in the here and now. And of course, what does it say in chapter 25 in Shemot? V'yasu li mikdash, you will build this mikdash, this holy place, this abode for my Shekhinah. V'shachanti b'tocham, and I, God, will live within you. Within you. So let's understand the Beit HaMikdash for a second here. The Beit HaMikdash in this concept becomes a place designed by Hashem to generate within us an immediate awareness of God's presence right with us. It's not meant to evoke some dreamlike image of a faraway place or some future life. It's meant to imbue us with the notion that if God is right here with me in this place, then everything about this place, and by extension, everything about me, is packed with spiritual potential, provided it's utilized properly and provided it becomes infused with and inspired by God's presence that's right here with me. And I'll just give you an example. I don't want to dwell on the Beit HaMikdash in this class. There's so much to dwell on here, but I want to give you an example. Offerings, korbanot, which are ways of drawing close to God. So to use two specific examples, we offer sheep for certain offerings and we offer goats. What do they represent? So a sheep is that part of us which is so susceptible to just following other people. Well, everybody's doing it. There's nothing wrong if I cheat a little bit, lie a little bit, speak badly about my fellow. So we take a sheep and we say, we want to raise up this aspect of myself because it has good things too. I want to be in the right herd and I want to follow the right leaders and the right examples. And I don't want to just be an arrogant unto myself person. So there's aspects of being a sheep which I can utilize to attach myself to God. And there's aspect of being a sheep which makes me vulnerable to becoming just another Joe in the marketplace, to use a Talmudic phrase, and to become nothing great and to be unfocused on the proximity of God in the here and now. So we offer sheep up to elevate that aspect of ourselves. What is a goat? What's the nature of a goat? Small example here. Goats are a domesticated animal that will not provide any work for others. You can't get them to pull a plow. You can't get them to cooperate. They are unto themselves. Part of the offerings. It's built within us. We all have such feelings at times. Leave me alone. Nobody's going to tell me what to do. At times, this becomes important, like when it comes to really finding my own path forward in connection to God. so that I can feel like as an individual, I'm expressing myself spiritually. It can also mean selfish. I'm not willing to contribute to the community good. So we have offerings, very specific offerings that take the goat nature within us and say, we want to utilize this only for the good out of awareness of what God has in store for us. And we want to avoid it becoming an impediment and standing between me, living a more spiritually fulfilling and meaningful life. Now, there's 750 years time between Jacob's dream and the time when Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon, dedicates the Beit HaMikdash, a huge, vast period of time. Some of that time, obviously, is the building of the house of Jacob, which was his mission, that he became imbued with when he woke up in this place and he understood God's proximity. Jacob became supercharged to travel to the house of Lavan, to marry, to have children, to raise his family, to return back to his homeland, reconnect with the heritage that Abraham and Isaac had created, and work tirelessly to build unity, which was very elusive, connection, and spirituality within his family, his Beit Yaakov, his house of Jacob, which ultimately grows into Bnei Yisrael, we the Jewish people. We go through going down to Egypt, enslavement, becoming free, standing at Mount Sinai, and a year later we have this Mishkan, we have this Ohel Moed, this tent of meeting. We build a physical place to emphasize the proximity of God in the center of the physical camp of the Jewish people so that we can all sense that proximity. It can penetrate every aspect of our being. It can elevate every aspect of us to be utilized for holiness and in connection with God. A beautiful understanding of what life is all about. And certainly grounds for us to feel a tremendous sense of sadness in missing that opportunity to go 3 times a year to the Beit HaMikdash, or more often, to see a house of God, see evidence of Hashem's presence tangibly in the world. Of course, we've lived for 2,000 years without a temple. We've preserved our Torah, we've preserved our way of life, we fulfill mitzvot, we carry on this legacy, but it's not on the same level of depth and totality and unity of purpose that can be achieved with the temple, and that's what we long for. That's what's missing. But let's now turn our attention to what's gone wrong. And if we have this epiphany, when we wake up, as we occasionally do, just like Jacob did at this place, and we say, wow, Hashem is really with me. I can sense his presence. I can sense God's closeness. I can see the purpose in fulfilling mitzvot. I can see the value in only speaking positively of others. I can see the value in this whole system of living of 613 mitzvot. I can feel the sense of yearning if only we had a Beit HaMikdash to bring us to still the next level. We know that we still run into problems of galvanizing our beings with the same focus and the same depth of purpose that Jacob did, that Yaakov did when he woke up from that dream. So what has gone wrong? What does the Torah tell us that we have to be aware of so that we can become the type of people, we can become the people who will ultimately benefit from having a Beit HaMikdash, and we can bring about the rebuilding of the temple by removing whatever impediments there are, which cause God to say, there's no house of God in the world right now, because if it was rebuilt, it would have to be destroyed. And that's the concept we have. So we're going to build on this one idea, which the Kutzker Rebbe was very famously said, when asked, where is God? And we have a song, where is God? God is here, there, everywhere, up, down, right, left, which is all true. But the Kutzker Rebbe, in his inimitable sharpness, said you can find Hashem's presence every place you let Hashem in. okay? Not going to be dependent on a particular GPS coordinate. It's not going to be dependent on a particular time you're living in or anything external. It's a question of you being open and seeking God and valuing closeness to God and being open to creating room for Hashem in your life. So what is the framework that pushes Hashem out? So we have a statement in Pirkei Avot, in Ethics of the Fathers, chapter 4, Mishnah 28, which Rav Tzadok HaKohen writes here, says, if you want to know why we don't have a temple today, if you want to know what stands between us waking up with that same attitude that Yaakov Avinu, that Jacob, our forefather, had, and saying, wow, Hashem is here, right here with me. I didn't know that. I didn't understand that. Now I'm going to become supercharged to build for an ever closer, deeper, stronger relationship with God, which will develop a Beit Yaakov, a house of Jacob, and a Bnei Yisrael, the children of Israel, and will enable us to merit the opportunity to first construct a Mishkan, a tent of meeting, so that God's dwelling within us grows and is magnified, and then ultimately to come to the land of Canaan, the land of Israel, and to occupy that land and to build a permanent temple, and then to keep moving onward and upward from there. So he quotes this Mishnah in Pirkei Avot, the statement of Rabbi Eliezer, and Rabbi Eliezer says, lays it out, Hakina, v'hataiva, v'hakovod, motzin et ha'adam min ha'olam. Jealousy, overindulgence in physical pleasures, and arrogance, glory, self-aggrandizement, however you want to translate kavod, they remove a person from the world. So first of all, we see this insight of what it means to be removed from the world. These aspects of our personality, which are not contained and directed properly, they remove us from the world. We lose access to the holiness and the opportunity to perceive Hashem right here with us. They become, to use a phrase, mechitzot. They become barriers. They harden our heart, so that when we wake up with a sense that God is with us, we can't muster the totality of commitment to make holiness and closeness to God a part of every aspect of our lives. And we're going to play out these three things in a very interesting, creative way, a structure that my wife has created here. And I'm not going to do it in the same order. I'm going to go in order of the Tanakh. So what's the first story that's related to these three aspects of kina, of jealousy, taiva, indulgence in physical pleasures, overindulgence, kavod, a burning desire to be honored, to feel as though everyone's attention is rightfully on me, which will cut me off from the world? Let's start in Genesis chapter 3, sentence 5, which is Adam and Chava inside the Garden of Eden. And again, in this framework, we understand that Gan Eden, the garden that God created and fashioned for Adam and Eve to live in and thrive in, it was a supercharged Beit HaMikdash, a supercharged house of holiness, where God would literally go for walks with them, be present with them, and enjoy with them vicariously, eating from fruits, guarding the world, uplifting all humanity through their awareness and closeness to God. That's the idyllic picture we have. So what goes wrong? If you turn to page 14 in the Stone Chumash, which is chapter 3 in Genesis. So we find that the serpent, the Nachash, is out to disrupt and to breach this opportunity, this holy place of Gan Eden, and to disrupt it. How does he do so? So in chapter 3, sentence 5, what does the Nachash say to Chava, to Eve? For God knows that on the day you eat of it, this tree that you told me you're not allowed to eat, your eyes will be opened. You will be like God, knowing good and bad. What do we associate that with? Let's associate that with a sense of kavod, a sense of arrogance, a sense of misplaced importance. Because what the Nachash is saying is, you don't need God. You don't need God's wisdom. You don't need God's guidance. You don't need God's understanding. It's you. Eat from that fruit and you'll become God yourself. And in a very, very significant way, as people pursue kavod and honor, what they're really doing is saying that it's not so much about God and attaching myself to God, but it's really about me. It's I'm the center of attention. I'm the one who holds all the cards. And this phrase, on the day that you will eat from this fruit, you will be like God. You will independently know good from evil, and you don't need God anymore. That's what this fruit will open up to you. It was an appeal to Chava's sense of glory and honor and aggrandizement. And this is the danger that of placing ourselves, as we pursue honor, as we feel more important in our own eyes, placing ourselves alongside of God, placing ourselves even above God, but even alongside of God does the job. And in a certain sense, kavod always in its pursuit triggers a sense, an insatiable sense of, I'm honored by these people, I want to be honored by more people. I'm honored because of my wisdom, I also want to be honored because of my beauty. I'm honored in all these different dimensions, and it still doesn't satisfy me. And this preoccupation, this focus on self, this scenario that the Nachash, that the snake pointed Chava towards, this removed Adam and Chava from the Garden of Eden. It took them out of this mini world that God had created for them so that they could no longer benefit from it, they could no longer guard it, they could no longer watch over it. It put them in exile from a perfect opportunity to draw close to God. So you see how this is part and parcel of the experience of Tisha B'Av, of focusing on what needs to change within me so that I become more open to and receptive to the eye-opening experience that Jacob felt when he woke up and said, God is in this place, which galvanized Jacob to go on and to be the father of 12 tribes of the Jewish people and to ultimately illuminate the entire world. This is one impediment. Let's look at a second impediment based on this Mishnah. We'll go in order here. Let's look at jealousy, kina. Anyone want to suggest where that comes up in an orderly way of looking at the Torah here? Anybody want to unmute themselves and make reference to something? So we'll turn to Genesis chapter 4, sentences 6 and 7. It's on page 21 in the Stone Chumash. And we're talking about Cain and Hevel. And of course, what's the story of Cain and Abel, the two brothers, twins? They both had a yearning. Well, really, Hevel had the yearning to make an offering to God, to draw ever closer to God. They're outside of the Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden. They're making their way in the world. And Hevel is moved with this idea, I'm going to take from my flock and I'm going to make an offering to God as a way of drawing closer, a korban, the closest to God. Cain apes what Hevel has done. And lo and behold, God rejects the offering of Cain and accepts the offering of Hevel. So what do we have here? We have an immense outburst of anger, disappointment, jealousy, a sense that a resentment, a sense that am I delegitimized? Am I less of a person? What about me? I too deserve an opportunity to draw close to God. Am I being overlooked, unappreciated? And this feeling of rejection as it festers within the person, we know what it leads to in the case of Cain and Hevel. We know it leads to a brother killing a brother, but it certainly causes an alienation from God and a blockage for me ever to open my eyes and say, look around me, look at this world I live in. Look what an immense, how God has infused the world with holiness, opportunity to connect with God, opportunity to, through mitzvot, elevate every aspect of my being. But jealousy says, no, I'm going to be preoccupied. This one has this one has that. Why don't I have this? It's so demoralizing of a feeling. And of course, it's a feeling that feeds on itself just like honor does. And it's never going to be satiated. It's never going to be solved. It's what's in the news these days. If you have a 400-foot yacht that costs $500 million, so I'm going to build a 600-foot yacht that costs $750 million. Why? Well, because of my chopped liver. Don't I count? Don't I have a place in the world? But that's what you need to find your place in the world. That's going to moor you and give you a sense of comfort, connection with God in this world. I don't think so. I don't think that's ever going to happen. And therefore, we see again how kina is an unending, unquenchable process of drawing within myself, of eliminating the possibility of perceiving God in the world, and therefore alienating me from the very nature of the world that God built into it, and preventing the world and my experience and my life penetrating me with holiness and guiding my instinctual self and my physical self and bringing to the fore my spiritual self and being able to pursue those yearnings in standing with God in front of me. All those things get pushed aside. And that's this idea we see by Cain and Hevel, that sin hovers at the door. It grows. It gnaws away at the person. What happens to Cain? Nod, you're going to have no place in the world. You go from place to place. Eventually you'll be killed by a hunter by accident because you're just not part of what the world was meant to convey and meant to teach. Let's go on to Genesis chapter 9, sentence 20. And we're going to look at the sense of overindulgence and the sense of taiva and a pursuit of physical pleasure. And where are we going to encounter it? We're on page 43 in the Stone Chumash. We're going to encounter it, unfortunately, in Noach, immediately following the flood. What happens to Noach on chapter 9, sentence 18? He comes out of the ark in sentence 20. Now, the man of the earth debased himself and planted a vineyard. He drank of the wine and he became drunk, and he uncovered himself within his tent. His overindulgence, his seizing of the world as a way of this is going to give me meaning, left him naked, vulnerable. All of his least valuable or least honorable aspects were left out there to be exploited. And who comes next? Who comes next? And this again is Rav Hirsch's understanding of this. Who comes next is his son, Chum, and says in sentence 22, Chum, the father of Canaan, saw his father's nakedness and told his brothers outside. So what does Chum do? Chum already is a father. So he already has an appreciation for the fact that I have a child. Of course, my child should have reverence for me, should respect me. I brought a child into the world. I've devoted myself to him. Now, this is my father, and he's debased. He's open for exploitation. He's naked. He's vulnerable. And I'm going to pounce on that as a way of demeaning him and taking advantage of him. And what does that produce? It produces in Chum, the next generation, because as this overindulgence grows, this intoxication becomes debased and it's exploited by others. So you end up with a people like Canaan, the 7 nations of Canaan who inhabit the land of Canaan, and who the land vomits them out and throws them off when the Jewish people are ready to come in, because the holiness of the land of Israel can't tolerate an emphasis on indulgence and exploitation and debasement. And that's what Canaan represented. And that's who Canaan was. So again, what do we see? We see this idea of exile, this idea that, unfortunately, what we see in Jewish history, the sense of not being able to manage our sense of jealousy, our sense of comfort in the world, the sense of honor, which everybody deserves to be honored with the dignity of a human being. But if we don't manage that, and if we don't attach that to a vision of drawing close to God, then that festers, it grows, it develops, it debases us, it turns us into ourselves. And there's no room to recognize God beyond that. And as in the Mishnah, as we referred to, of Rebbe Elazar, who said that Hakina v'Taiva v'Kavod, that these aspects take a person out of this world. There's an interesting interplay. I mean, there's a few of them, but here's one idea. These 3 attributes of human nature, when they are seizing our awareness and they become defining of who we are, we become exiled from ourselves. And as one of the explanations says, I have a desire for comfort. I have a desire for indulgence. So I'm going to violate many Torah laws. I'm a jealous person, so I'm going to take advantage of my fellow man. And then at times my spiritual self is going to come to the fore and I'm going to say, oh, I want to return to God. I want to do tshuva. But I can't lower myself even before God because I'm filled with arrogance and self-possession and a sense of I can't get enough glory and honor. So how can I bring myself down to ask forgiveness of my fellow man, to seek forgiveness of God, to really return to a better path, which I feel within myself would be there. So we're approaching Tisha B'Av. We're in exile, and you can live in Yerushalayim, and you can have a view of the Temple Mount from your condo window, and we're still in exile. Because unfortunately, these aspects of our nature that Rebbe Elazar points out, this proclivity towards jealousy and resentment, this proclivity towards comfort and overindulgence, this proclivity towards desiring honor and glory and aggrandizement, especially over other people, they haunt us. So that even when we're stirred, we have difficulty seeing through the mechitza, the barrier, the confusion that these attributes place between us and God. So we're not able to say, Ochein yesh Hashem b'makom hazeh. Wow, I didn't know it. God is right here. God is right next to me. He's not up in the heavens. He's right here with me. We're Jewish people. We recognize that every aspect of our nature and our world has seeds of holiness within it that we can unlock and that can become part and parcel of who we are and can redirect any jealousy we have to being the kind of jealousy that scholars feel like, oh, I wish I was a bigger scholar. I wish I had a closer relationship with God. And all of these aspects, this idea of honor can be the honor of Torah and being a person who draws honor to God. Every aspect of my nature can be utilized if we could only see through these impediments, and we could wake up with the understanding that Jacob drew from that dream, that this ladder meant that God is not remote. These angels going up and down were just a way of cementing a connection and a bond between God and me, and that every opportunity is there for me to utilize every aspect of who I am in a way that's going to build a mikdash. It's going to build a sanctuary so that God can live within me, so that a temple can be rebuilt, so that a Gan Eden, a Garden of Eden, could again take place amongst mankind the way that it was envisioned, with the lion and laying down next to the lamb, harmony, peace, respect, no exploitation of others, people willing to share the world with others in harmony and peace and in relationship to Hashem. These are things that if we think about them on Tisha B'Av, and we sort of start opening our eyes a little bit wider and making the effort to see Hashem's closeness to us and to push aside these other impediments for us seeing this, then we could see the temple rebuilt, and we could see Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, becoming a festival, because it will have galvanized us into remaking our own existence and the existence of mankind in the world into an unending relationship of mikdash, where God's connection to us grows and grows and grows, so that we could go for a walk with Hashem, and we could enjoy the world and all of its beauty on a spiritual level, which draws us ever closer to Hashem, which fulfills the purpose of the world. And please God, we should see the temple rebuilt in our days. B'mheira b'yameinu. Happy to try to answer any questions if there are any.
Rabbi, I'd just like to say Yasher Koach, and Yasher Koach to your wife as well.
Yeah, please, it's really her thinking here, and really everything that we should, our Torah learning and our growth on Tisha B'Av should be a merit for her in good health and well-being. Ezrat Hashem.
And we should all have an easy fast.
Amen. A meaningful one too. Okay, thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you, Betty.
Good night.
Yes. Good night.